Hello and welcome to the Education Training Sector Update. My name is Sarah James. I am the Sector Manager at Pearson for Education Training and also Employability. I hope that you find the information in this presentation useful. There are going to be three parts to the presentation. The first is will be about the new Apprenticeship Standards and an update in relation to those. The second part will bring you up to date on what is going on currently with our qualifications, what we've got under review, what's in development. And then the third part is a more general look at how the education training suite generally can be used to support apprenticeship and how we expect that to work. So the first thing, as I said, is an update on the apprenticeship standards. In terms of a summary, just to start, basically the main core FE mentor, assessor, coach and teacher standards at levels 3, 4 and 5, they are not yet approved for delivery, but we are expecting that they will be hopefully very shortly, i.e. within the next month. We are at a stage where the standards and assessment plans for level 3 and 4 are both published, but the funding bands are not agreed. That's in relation to the FE mentor and assessor coach. The FE teacher, on the other hand, is a little bit further behind. We're not expecting that one to be ready quite so soon. But it really is quite exciting news in relation to the FE mentor and assessor coach, because we really are expecting that they will be ready for delivery fairly shortly. Teaching assistants, at the moment, we've only got still an apprenticeship standard in development at level 3. It isn't yet approved delivery. The standard is approved and that is published on the IFA website. The assessment plan hasn't been published yet, but I have heard that it has been approved with a couple of conditions that are currently being looked at, and that the funding band hopefully is going to be approved at the same time. So it's looking like the level 3 teaching assistant standard will be ready for delivery for centres in the next couple of months, I would hope. So that one is also quite close to being ready. The learning and development at levels 3 and 5, the standard is approved, but the assessment plan is not approved yet, and I don't really have any further information about when that might happen. So just to start by going a little bit more into depth on the requirements for the core education training standards. If I start with level 3 FE learning mentor requirements. So basically, learners have to be on programme for a minimum of 12 months before entering Gateway. And then within that 12 months, they needed to have achieved a minimum of level 1 safeguarding. That is a qualification determined as suitable by the employer. English, maths and IT at level 2. They also need to have completed a showcase, including a selection of exemplary evidence showing that they are ready to go through Gateway and begin their endpoint assessment. And then in terms of endpoint assessment, it's quite challenging actually. There are going to be 2 learning mentor sessions observed, totaling 120 minutes, which will usually be a one-to-one session with learner, but it might be a session with a smaller group of learners, and that's 64% of the EPA. And then there will be a professional discussion lasting 1 hour, or 36% of EPA. And then once the learner has done their endpoint assessment, a grade, a fail, pass or distinction is awarded dependent on whether how well the learner has done and whether they've achieved. And so we're really expecting that this will be a very popular standard over quite a lot of sectors, because a lot of employers are looking at the people that they have in place in order to help deliver apprenticeships across all of the sectors, and as such, we're expecting that that this really will be very, very popular amongst customers when it is finally available. We've then, at the same time, alongside, got the level 4 FE assessor coach requirements, and actually it's really quite similar to the level 3 FE mentor. So in terms of on programme, it's a minimum of 15 months before entering Gateway. So that's slightly longer, which is understandable really, as it's higher level. Again, a minimum of level 1 safeguarding, English, maths and IT at level 2, and completion of a showcase, including selection of exemplary evidence to show they are ready to go through Gateway. Then in terms of endpoint assessment, 2 assessor coach sessions are observed, totaling 120 minutes. And again, usually one-to-one, but maybe a group session, professional discussion lasting an hour, and the grading of fail, pass or distinction is also the same. You will notice that the split of marks between the EPA, between the observations and the professional discussions are slightly different. So the way that the grading is worked out is slightly different to the level 3, but it's not significant. But in the main, the two are fairly comparable, I would say, in terms of what's expected of the centres and the learners. So just moving on to what we have in place at present, just to remind you, if you aren't aware, or let you know if you aren't aware of this. So basically, most of the SACE frameworks are being extended to 2020, unless there's a specific reason to get rid of them. And this also means that they will be in place as SASWA frameworks for that time as well. And we have the following that are available: employment related services at level 3, learning and development at level 3, specialist support for teaching and learning in schools at level 3, and supporting teaching and learning in schools at level 2. And I really expect that they will be in place until 2020 now. Okay, so moving on to qualifications update, and this including a bit of a focus on assessor and verifier qualifications. So in terms of the FE core qualifications, they have been extended to the 30th of July 2020. They are the Pearson BTEC Level 3 Award, Level 4 Certificate, Level 3 Diploma in Education and Training. So that's AET, CET and DET. And we're expecting, there is a slight possibility that somebody might decide that an additional optional unit is needed or something prior to that date, but we really are expecting that they will exist in their current form for until that date. Level 3 assessor qualifications, including all awards and the certificate. Level 4 internal and external verifier qualifications, including all apart from one which is withdrawn, which is the lead external verifier award, which I'll talk about again later. So all of the assessor and verifier qualifications have also been extended to the 30th of July 2020. And to be absolutely clear, when I talk about them being extended to then, that is for registrations, okay? So you can register learners right up until that date. And that's the date at which they may move on to something else, and they may not exist for registrations anymore. But we will always include plenty of time for your learners to complete and certificate. We'd have a minimum of 1 year certification date across all of these, right up to, quite possibly, if we change the level 5 diploma, we'd be looking at 3. Okay, so we will make sure that once you register learners, you then have plenty of time to certificate them. I've got some qualifications that are set to, that have review dates at the end of December 2020. Sorry, not 2020, 2018. And 2 of those are the Level 3 Certificate in Learning and Development and the Level 4 Diploma in Learning and Development. So at the moment, I'm looking at what to do with these. Now, the level 3 certificate is obviously an ACE apprenticeship, as I was just saying. So I'm expecting that one will be extended. I'm a little bit less sure about the level 4 diploma, but either way, you need to, if you're using those qualifications, you need to keep an eye out via your quality nominee, who will get an email about this, and Insight, to find out what will be going on with those in the future, because at the moment it's not fully that, you know, I can't absolutely confirm what will happen to them. The same thing applies to the whole supporting teaching and learning suite. Now, again, at the risk of repeating myself, again, some of these appear in the current SACE frameworks, and so I would expect that we would choose to keep them until then. However, again, I can't confirm that that's the case, and you need to make sure that you keep an eye on any communications coming through your quality nominee or Insight, just to make absolutely sure that that they won't be going at the end of December, because we haven't 100% made that decision yet. Here are some qualifications that we have decided to withdraw. The top one, we have these have already gone. So the Pearson Edexcel Level 3 MVQ Certificate in Advice and Guidance and Level 4 MVQ Diploma in Advice and Guidance have been withdrawn, with a final registration date of the 30th of April 2018. If you have got learners on programme, as I was saying, we make sure we leave plenty of time for them to certificate. So the final certification date is the 31st of December 2020. Career guidance, we are also going to withdraw because we've got relatively low numbers on that qualification. The final registration date is 31st December 2018, and the final certification date is 31st of December 2020. We are also withdrawing the Level 4 certificate in leading the external quality assurance of assessment, and the final registration date for that qualification is the 31st of December 2018, and the final certification date will be 12 months later. This particular qualification we're withdrawing because really it's designed for our senior standards verifiers, except, to be honest, we go for experience, and it's experience that qualifies people to be senior standards verifiers, rather than this qualification that isn't actually a requirement. So as a result, you know, from the employer point of view, for once, we've decided to remove this qualification from what is available. We've also got a new qualification that that we have very recently made available, the Pearson BTEC Level 2 Award in Principles of Safeguarding in a Learning Environment. And this qualification is designed basically to fulfil the requirements for the Apprenticeship Standards, where a qualification in safeguarding is required. So basically it's designed to be used on programme across level 3, level 4 and level 5, where the requirement is that they have a safeguarding qualification at level 1 or above, or level 2 in the level 5 standards. And it's on screen tested, and the first test opportunity, the testing is now live, because which is good news, and it will be ready for the Apprenticeship Standards being released. So I wanted to just have a bit of a focus on the assessor verifier qualifications, because I think we've had quite a few queries around these and how they fit into apprenticeship and the future. I think these have, to some extent, evolved in focus already, as they were designed originally for the kind of QCF NVQ qualifications. Additional guidance has been recently issued by the Education Training Foundation for the use of these, and I've included the link to that guidance so that you're able to access that easily. I think the main points, despite the fact that we don't have very many NVQ qualifications anymore, is that the purpose of these to upskill the assessor is to upskill the assessor workforce, and this hasn't changed. I think it gives clarification that achievement does not have to be the assessment of a regulated qualification, but could also be assessment of other things such as NOS, employer standards, or new apprenticeship standards. But we do advise that if centres are unsure about whether the evidence they are using is suitable, that they check in advance, because what we don't want to happen is that somebody uses them and then an SV goes out and there is a problem. They are suitable for both the EPA and gateway stages of assessment in apprenticeship, and we are expecting quite a large increase in the number of assessors required with the new apprenticeship standards, both for gateway and EPA. So just if they don't require necessarily a regulated qualification, just a few examples of good practice. So I think, obviously, really ensuring that trainee assessors are properly supported and supervised, countersigning their decisions, and this includes when the course they are assessing doesn't actually require a qualified assessor, because sometimes when we start talking about employer standards, NOS, actually, yes, you can train assessors using them, but there isn't necessarily an assessment strategy that says, right, this is what you must do. But the decisions of the trainee assessors for their course need to be countersigned, or they all need to be countersigned. Obviously, again, regular and appropriate CPD, as always happens, observing trainee assessors at appropriate intervals, including and making sure that the observation is face-to-face, using the correct type of evidence and assessment methodology for the corresponding assessor qualification, making sure that the countersigner, who is the learner's mentor, is also occupationally competent in the area being assessed and is a qualified assessor. So we get quite a few questions because people are looking to very often upskill assessors really quickly and really easily. So in terms of how long does it take to complete an assessor qualification? Well, there's no real set time scale, but we would expect it to take a minimum of 3 months. We'd be very 2 to 3 months, dependent on the size of the qualification, because of course some are small award-sized qualifications and some are larger qualifications. I think we'd be a bit concerned if people were being put through these in 1 or 2 weeks, because ultimately you need to have that time to develop people. Another question, can unqualified assessors deliver these? And the answer to that is no. And if you think about it, it's fairly obvious that you can't really have an unqualified assessor countersigning an unqualified assessor. It's not really going to work. It's not really going to happen. It's fairly basic when you think about it. But I think it's quite unusual for an assessor not to be allowed to be training towards, if that makes sense. So what qualifications or standards can those working towards the unit assess vocational skills, knowledge and understanding assess? So this is more classroom based. But it could also include workshops and simulated environments. So the trainee assessor's evidence must include the full range of assessment of skills, knowledge and understanding through BTEC, and it could be the whole range of BTEC, first national, technical, higher nationals, work skills, BTEC professions and specialist, traineeships and functional skills. On the other hand, what qualifications or standards can those working towards the unit assess? Competence in the work environment assess. Basically, this is very, very specifically work-based competence. So It's potentially NVQ type qualifications, but also potentially National Occupational Standards, Apprenticeship Standards, or employer specified standards. Okay, so on to the final part then, which is about how you can maybe start thinking about your education and training offer supporting apprenticeships for employers, and some of the things that you can potentially suggest to employers that you are able to do for them. So just to start, these are potentially suitable products. So number one, assessor qualifications, which we've just talked about. A second one, potentially, the award in education and training. Thirdly, awards in peer mentoring and peer education, and also safeguarding to ensure that they've got suitable people, suitably qualified people in their business. So just before I move on, I think assessor qualifications, it's fairly obvious what the link is. Award in education and training is very, very much about micro teaching. And it's quite a nice small qualification. It's only 12 credits. And so it allows employers to fairly quickly give their staff an overview of the kind of basics of feeding back to people, of starting to do a little bit of assessment activity, and how based on that they can tell people how they can improve. And so the award in education training really does have quite a lot of potential for employers who are looking to just upskill a few of their staff in supporting apprenticeships. The awards in education, in peer mentoring and peer education, are actually quite similar from that point of view, but they're just a slightly lighter touch. And then safeguarding is to make sure that they have suitably qualified people where they are looking after apprentices. So just a myth buster next. Assessor qualifications are not needed in the new standards. The reality is, as I've said earlier, there are going to be an increase in the number of assessors needed due to requiring these for both Gateway and EPA. I think it's worth saying that some assessment plans actually specify that assessors do need to be qualified. So while it's not a blanket rule, I have certainly seen some that say that assessors do need to be qualified. And in some sectors, particularly, it's seen as best practice to use qualified assessors in the workplace for assessing learners. And I'm thinking here, particularly, I find this in the health sector. For example, they quite like to have qualified assessors assessing. So myth 2, which I think is a myth and it isn't a myth, but specific assessor qualifications are required for apprenticeship and EPA. The reality at the moment is that the recognised qualification to support workplace assessment is the Pearson Edexcel Level 3 award in assessing competence in the work environment. And the whole point of that qualification is it is about assessing workplace competence. And so at the moment, it's the official assessor qualification that all of the AOs will look for assessors, and this is supported by the guidance from the Education and Training Foundation. And we are going to be putting together support material to help providers deliver assessor qualifications for the new apprenticeship standards, as well as talking to several of our customers about some of the additional challenges that relate to EPA, to see potentially if anything else is needed in the next 12 months or so. We've then got the Pearson BTEC Level 3 Award in Education Training, but I've already explained that this is really highly relevant to people who are supporting apprentices in the workplace. Oh, actually, yes. One other thing is there are 2 versions. There is a BTEC version, and there is also a version with competence units. And the competence units actually includes a unit from the Assessor Award. So that's understanding the principles and practices of assessment. And so that actually gives people an overview of assessment as well as the delivery aspect. And then I've already talked about the awards in peer education and peer mentoring. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. That's all from me.